All right, good afternoon. We've got everybody in the house. Welcome, and thank you for coming to the Golden Corral today. All right, we're online streaming at Street Level America. Thank you, Dave Adams. All right. All right, I've got a contest for you today. If you can name everybody in the room, I'll bring you a free book next week. I'd like to welcome back Mike Scapine right here. Thank you, Mike, for being with us. All right. Very good. Mike, who all was the original leaders in this group many years ago? John? Okay. All right. Very good. CDB's Pizza, where this group started. What year was that?
2015, wasn't it? 2015. 2015, 2016.
Somewhere back in that time frame.
Okay. 10 or 11 years ago, something like that. Very good. All right. Well, thank you for being here today. And we've got a lot of putting out good stuff in the emails that you guys help provide to me so I can share it with all of the people. So continue to do that. We've got several things coming up this week we'll talk about in just a minute, but let's open in a word of prayer. Dave. Come on up here, sir. There you go.
Thank you very much. Let's go to the Lord in prayer. Lord Jesus, we love you and we love America, and we are asking for your guidance. We're asking for your provision. We're asking you to move on the hearts and minds of those in Washington, D.C., the state of Georgia, and other ways in America, to return America to godly values, godly laws. Help us, Lord, as we kneel only before you. Empower us, indwell us with your precious Holy Spirit to guide us in the way that you want us to go to save America and to make it a godly nation once again. Lord, we ask for protection of those in Washington, D.C. That people have ill intents towards. We ask for protection of our troops overseas. We ask for your hand of deliverance and guidance be on America again. As we in 2 Chronicles 7:14 humble ourselves and pray for the healing of this land. May God bless America again, and Lord, use us in some small way to bring about the restoration and the revival in this great godly nation. In the name of Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, amen.
Fantastic. Thank you. Jim Hammock, would you lead us in the pledge, please, sir? Flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Fantastic. Thank you. All right, this week we've got several things going on, of course, including a crescendo on Thursday with the crazy people down in Atlanta, right? Sine Die is this Thursday. I'm going down. I don't know if others are planning to go down, but I know in our larger group, there's several people that will be going down to the Capitol on Thursday. So if you're interested in carpooling, I'm not going to go early. You know, those people stay all day, right? Sometimes they cut it off at 5 o'clock. Sometimes it's midnight when they end their session. So I'm planning to be there for the late morning and afternoon and then come back. But if anybody is interested in riding, let me know, and we can talk about that. If others are going, y'all can arrange your own carpools among the different groups. And then, of course, Friday is Good Friday, right? And Easter on Sunday. Any other events this week that we need to make note of? Anything in Hall County? Next week, we will be back here for Tuesday, of course. We'll have Ken Yasser, who's running for governor, will be speaking. So let's get a good crowd out for Ken. And then also the next day, on Wednesday, April 8th, you've got a flyer there. But we're, love him or hate him, we're going to have Rick Jackson over in Homer at Banks County GOP over at Chimney Oaks. And those people are going to put out a nice spread for us, and it'll be a very nice event. We should be able to pack the house from Hall County, Banks, Habersham, and others will be coming to that event. So come on out. Think of a tough question you want to ask Rick Jackson. I think we're also going to have Steve Gooch and Greg Dolezal there as well. And then April 18th, Hall County GOP at the Civic Center, and that'll be 9 to 4, and that'll be a good event as well. So put those dates on your calendar. Yeah. Sure, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Come on up there. So while Dave's coming up, how many people here like to buy extended warranties? Don't y'all buy extended warranties all the time on your cars and your appliances? And you go to Home Depot and check out, and they ask you about an extended warranty, right? Well, Hall County just bought another extended warranty for $91,000 for Dominion voting machines. What?
That's from last year. What we want to do is have our eyes up.
That was last year.
At the Board of Commissioner meeting when they okayed it. But they're going to be trying to okay it again in April. We've got to watch them.
So it's coming up for renewal in April. Thank you.
$92,000 because it goes up every year.
Okay. Fantastic. Woohoo. Jim.
I don't know it. Mike would be, he's more politically in tune than I am.
Yeah.
But it's almost like, I hate to say it, that all the counties, their backs against the wall as far as it goes with the state, the state election board and everything else, because they're not really giving the counties much of a choice. So even though we got a good chair of the county commission in David Gibbs, I hate to say it, but he might be voting to extend it only because he doesn't have a choice. Well, if you think about it, that's the only method that they're giving us for elections. It's got to change. We all agree on that.
It's in the contract.
You know,
Well, this shouldn't be the first time he thought about it, so that he doesn't have time to make another choice.
but David, well, I will say this, the county commissioners from across the state, they need the support of the Richards and Arlene's and Brian's and Tom's and everything, because the stuff needs to go away. You know.
He knew that 5 years ago.
Who?
The commissioner.
Well, David Gibbs hasn't been in that long.
Thought about it.
All I'm saying is we got to continue the fight.
We want to be there in April.
Dave.
Okay, let me get on camera again. It's hard to do all this at once. Okay, I'm going to be going to Houston, Texas mid-month next month. We're going to be providing live reports from the National Rifle Association annual convention in Houston, talking about the importance of the Second Amendment, how people across America feel about the right to keep and bear arms, how the NRA is trying to shepherd those rights. So we have had more. We've had a slight change in travel plans, so this trip is going to be more expensive than I had planned. So your donations are very helpful. We're going to be driving because we can't count on the airlines being on time, and it's where I'm on a tight time schedule. You can donate by going to streetlevelamerica.com. We are growing Street Level America, and we are planning on being at the NRA convention every year. We were there last year in Atlanta. This year it's going to be in Houston. Next year it's going to be back in Atlanta. I believe the Second Amendment is very important to protect the First Amendment. I believe Americans, it's in our DNA, and it's a safe There we go. Okay. So we'll be in Houston next month. Live reports from the NRA convention. And thank you for your support.
All right, very good. Let's see here. All right, today we're going to talk about Promethean action, and Tom Talbot and Mike Scapine have been very supportive of promoting this organization over the last several months. And so we've been able to put together some information that we can share with you today. And so Tom and Mike are going to lead us through that process.
Well, Mike and I found them, how many months ago was that, Mike? How many months ago did I call you and say, I want you to look at this?
In the summer, maybe July or August.
Okay. Well, anyway, and the reason after I found them on YouTube, I called Mike because I wanted to say, am I drinking the Kool-Aid? Does this sound too good to be true? Because I've been lied to in politics for 30 years, so this is nothing new. And so I set up a call. And so what I did is when I found them on YouTube and I watched 2 or 3 videos, then I learned Contact Us, and I got a hold of a lady in Houston named Evelyn Lance. Evelyn goes back to day one with the group when they were with LaRouche. So what we're going to show you first is like a 16, 17-minute clip with Barbara Boyd talking to Rich Does Politics, a gentleman out of London, about the history of LaRouche. And then after that, we're going to talk about, then the next clip is where we are today. But you need to hear this history because that will then explain the next clip about why we are and who we are today. And believe it or not, this isn't R versus D. This is good versus evil.
Y'all hear it back there?
Great, good to see you, Rich. Yes. I have to say something at the beginning of this for my own personal and legal reasons. We don't have anything to do with, I don't have anything to do with, these views are my own, with Elvis F. LaRouche, Mr. LaRouche's wife after he died in 2019, and continuing. That organization is completely different, we're not affiliated. And the views I express are from my personal experience for, actually being kind of front and center. I was the main paralegal in all the LaRouche prosecutions, which were numerous. And so I kind of have an inside view of everything that happened and, how it happened and where it happened and all of the slanders which are on Wikipedia, which are all complete BS, and I'm going to tell you why.
Okay, now wait a minute. You're saying Wikipedia is full of nonsense and BS and propaganda and lies?
Try and go and fix the LaRouche page, and you'll find out a lot of things.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, that says something about Lyndon LaRouche, that they are so committed to misrepresenting him, smearing him, and the same with the American system of political economy, that they want to, that it's been erased from the economics books. And you and I guess, slight aside, Barbara, you and I recorded a video in July last year about MI6 and the CIA. And then that was on the old channel, and I posted it again on this channel, richdoespolitics.com, and a lot of the comments were about how tanned I was, because I was really, really tanned, because I was in Cyprus at the time. It's really, really quite funny, like, Rich, you've fallen down a coal mine? Rich, you've been wrestling with coal? I just tan really well. But in that video, you mentioned a bit about Lyndon LaRouche. And I listened to that video again once I re-uploaded it, and I was like, oh, this could be really, really interesting, because the little that I've picked up from you and other people on my channel who are familiar with him and his work, he was a really, really smart man, very insightful and prescient. So take it away. Tell us about Lyndon LaRouche.
Well, he was a genius. There's no question about that. He at the bright age of 16, had read every philosopher there was in the world, and decided who he liked and who he didn't like. He comes to
16. He read all these philosophers, and who did he like?
Oh, he loved Plato. He loved Augustine. He loved the entire Platonic current in philosophy going up through the Renaissance. He loved Leibniz primarily. That was his favorite. And he didn't like Aristotle, and he didn't like any of the British positivists, and he didn't like any of the people who were actually kind of these glum empiricists, as opposed to thinking about what's the relationship of spirit or creativity and mind and matter. What is it really? And how do you actually bring together the two? And his answer was, well, in productive economies. That's where that happens. Creativity is actually the driver of economics. And then the question becomes, how do you measure it? Can you actually measure it?
And creativity is an expression of spirit.
Right.
So then a productive economy is then the manifestation of the expression of spirit.
Right. Absolutely.
Wow.
And when I was a philosophy major at Berkeley, and I had the same basic idea that, it was a philosophy department which taught empirical philosophy, British philosophy, and I thought that stunk. And I loved Plato, and I loved all of these ideas, which I loved the Meno dialogue, what that actually said about a slave boy being able to do the Pythagorean theorem because the idea for solving the puzzle was already in his head somehow. All right, I thought that was really something, and I just hated it. And that's when I ran into LaRouche, and I said, "Holy cow, this guy has actually solved the paradox, hasn't he?" And then, what happened was he predicted that August of 1971 was going to happen. He predicted it voraciously.
Let's go back a little bit. He's 16, born and brought up where? And family and siblings and all that?
Massachusetts and New Hampshire, between Massachusetts and New Hampshire. He comes from a Quaker family. He had a huge struggle in terms of World War II. He ultimately decided to join the Army, and he was a medic in India and Burma theaters during World War II. He experienced his really big run-in with the British Empire when he basically witnessed their assaults during the beginnings of the Indian Revolution on their massacres in Calcutta and elsewhere. He was there for that. And it affected him profoundly. What kind of person, he said to himself, could actually tolerate doing this? And that set off kind of a political gene in him. He likes to describe it as people would come to me for whatever reason and ask me what I thought of my Indian colleagues, and we would talk about what to do about all of this. And he says that was the germ that actually made me political. He comes back to the United States. He's at that point in reaction to what was going on in the United States, which was the McCarthy period. He's in the SWP, the Socialist Workers' Party. He he then just starts teaching economic classes after really studying economics in some depth and coming up with his own idea about this crucial question: how do you measure creativity? How do you recreate productive economies in such a way that you can say, okay, here's the kinds of things we need to do this over and over and over again, not having it be sporadic, with one president or another. And so he works on that. He studies the German mathematician Bernhard Riemann, trying to come up with a mathematical representation of the dynamics involved in this type of economics. And he's obsessed with that idea somewhat for a great period of time until, after he founded the National Caucus of Labor Committees, he came to the view, after trying to do various models, which were much more successful in predicting things than anything else at the time. But, the government then basically distorted its entire database, so the models became extremely unreliable. But that was the essence of what he was devoted to, is this idea of how do we develop human creativity? Can creativity be taught? And his answer was yes. If you study classical music, if you study classical literature, if you actually surround yourself with the types of Renaissance ideas that can exist in a culture, you can reproduce creativity. These are big questions, obviously, in epistemology and everything else. But he became a real teacher of all these things, which is what massively attracted young people to his movement during the 70s and 80s.
Okay.
Many of whom were children of the very elite, which created its own opposition in turn.
Okay, and what happened with him and the SWP? Did he become disillusioned with it, or?
He basically decided that they were just wrong, that Marx was wrong, that Marx's entire model was wrong because it didn't take into account innovation and technological innovation and changing platforms, so that there was the falling rate of profit, so-called, was actually a good thing, not a bad thing. And that economies could actually flourish through continuous technological and scientific innovation.
Right.
For example, in 1973, we were already advocating for fusion power as the next stage in humanity's development. We had a whole foundation called the Fusion Energy Foundation, which became the premier foundation in the United States advocating for fusion. We had people from Lawrence Livermore. We had all sorts of people around us actually, working out how fusion would actually function to be an economic driver of the new economics. He, basically had huge contacts in the third world because people realized immediately this is a man who wants to return to kind of what Roosevelt was trying to do, which is to allow us to develop. Lopez Portillo from Mexico called him basically the man of the future. But, Wall Street didn't see it that way, nor did Henry Kissinger, nor did James Jesus Angleton and the CIA, nor did a lot of other people. I'll give you an example. We had an independent political party called the U.S. Labor Party, which was a third party, and it got a lot of traction, or began to get some traction. But in 1976, Stephen Roosevelt, who was the editorial page editor of the Washington Post, published a piece in the Washington Post which said basically, don't cover LaRouche, or if you do, defame him. That's exactly what the Washington Post editorial page said. This man is dangerous. All right?
And he's dangerous because he's a threat to the established order.
Correct.
And the established order being one shaped and influenced and as a proxy of the City of London?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I mean, we were number 2 on the list of COINTELPRO targets by the FBI during the entire time of COINTELPRO. So we had big fights with the Communist Party USA. They would attack us when we were out in the street organizing. So we attacked them back, and that resulted in an FBI investigation for violating the civil rights of the Communist Party USA.
Okay.
If you can actually believe that's what happened, that did happen. And we were either portrayed as, if your audience was kind of profiled as right wing, it was said we were communists. Basically in the thrall of the Soviet Union. All right. If your audience was left wing, it was said that we were right wing fascists. And basically that's how we were portrayed, and it was so obvious what was going on in terms of the portrayals that the entire policies which we actually had were not to be really discussed. And that continued up until the Carter administration, ironically, where the FBI investigation was stopped. I actually walked into a meeting with the Attorney General of the United States at that point, Griffin Bell, who publicly apologized on behalf of the United States for what had happened to us in terms of all of that FBI stuff and what was going on. But then the private side of the intelligence community took over the operation, primarily the ADL. And we learned years later, after a lot of litigation, that the way that actually worked was not because the ADL was a Jewish organization. It was because the ADL was part of the Second Socialist International at that point. And the leader of the ADL, fact-finding division at that point, Owen Sewell, was part of the Second International. And the Second International was controlled by who? James Jesus Angleton at the CIA.
Okay.
And that in turn goes back to all of that stuff about Kim Philby and British intelligence and all of that other spook stuff. So we were swimming against the stream. When Ronald Reagan came in, LaRouche had campaigned, for a long time for what became Reagan's Strategic Defense Initiative. We had wanted beam weapons because we figured out that the way to end the threat of thermonuclear terror was somehow you had to basically defend against incoming missiles. So we spent a lot of effort putting out that this could be done. We were working with people at Lawrence Livermore at that time. Particularly, we had a very funny relationship with William Teller. On the one hand, he said he didn't like LaRouche. On the other hand, he let some of his best people actually talk to fusion energy back and forth. And what happened basically was that when Reagan came in, given our attacks on the Trilateral Commission, our documenting of what they had done and everything else, Reagan was deeply interested in us, and we had a back channel to the White House. We went from being persona non grata to walking into the front doors of the White House. And walking, having a relationship with the CIA, which actually evolved around making the Strategic Defense Initiative a worldwide project at that point. And so it's a very complex story, LaRouche actually had, on behalf of Reagan, a back channel to the Soviets, since they trusted him, to actually negotiate with them to have joint development of the Strategic Defense Initiative, or beam weapons. That was the original idea. And that flipped out official Washington completely. The fact that we were at the White House, the fact that, basically Kissinger wasn't running things anymore from that standpoint. And LaRouche was negotiating directly with Moscow on behalf of Reagan. That blew everything up completely. And there were a whole series of slanders. There was a big meeting, which I'm talking about now on my Substack, where the leading propagandist on Wall Street, John Train, again, a British asset, began holding meetings about developing new slanders about LaRouche, this time to saturate the environment in such a way that you could do a criminal prosecution. And that's what really happened.
And what sort of allegations did they make against him?
Well, we had a case in Boston. The first thing was just a pure fishing expedition. In other words, a grand jury was convened in Boston, Massachusetts, around the claim that some of our local people had committed credit card fraud. And that could be a whole show about what that was about, but that was the ostensible purpose. Now, we ended up getting indicted for that by Robert Mueller when he was in Boston. And by the end of the jury trial, or the case mistried, by the end of it, the jury was telling everybody, the Boston Herald and otherwise, that they would have acquitted because they were convinced that the government did it, not us. So it's a fascinating story. Now, then they basically rushed us to trial in Alexandria, Virginia on a completely new charge, taxes, and we were indeed convicted in a trial which went from indictment to trial in 6 weeks.
Wow.
Try and actually prepare for a trial, a criminal trial involving really complicated financial topics and.
Okay, this is the background of how Promethean they were. Okay, I'm sorry. This is the background how Promethean got started. After LaRouche died in 2018, 2019, his wife really had a dislike for Trump. These ladies believed in Trump's economic plan, and they then created Promethean just because they had to disassociate themselves for legal reasons with the LaRouche group, which is still active today. The gentleman that heads that up I think is in Switzerland. His name is Harvey Slinenberger. I'm sure I'm messing his name up. But anyway, I've seen him on several of these similar videos. Jim? Barbara Boyd? Oh, yes. Well, that's Susan. Yes.
Yes, Susan Cook.
Yes. Yeah, but Susan and Barbara are kind of a team. My contact is with one of their in their management team is Evelyn Lance. So let me have Mike say when he started to get involved and what his thoughts.
When Tom first sent me this and said, look at this and see if you think I'm off the wall here, but this is starting to make a lot of sense. And I'm not real sure how many of them I listened to begin with, but I definitely listened to the one you sent and several others after that. And all of a sudden, as I was listening to what they were teaching and what their experiences were, I began to realize this is bringing everything together to a central point. For instance, what's the origin of globalism? Have you ever wondered that? We know globalism exists. And if you go back to, I forget what year it was, 2015, 16, 17, somewhere along in there, when I was still on WDUN, I began to talk about globalism. And Joel Williams thought I'd lost my mind initially. And then he began to realize that there was this thing called globalism that was trying to make this country do some things that really weren't good for this country. Well, as I began to listen to what these ladies were talking about and what they've learned, I realized what the origin of globalism was. I know who's controlling it now. You know who it is? It's the City of London. Not London, England. It's the City of London. Do you know the difference? You do? Anybody else? The difference is the city of London refers to the financial district that's inside London, England, also referred to often as the square mile. And it's a banking industry area. And what makes it so significant is they don't answer to any government. There are no laws passed by England that affect the city of London.
40% of drug money in the world is laundered through the financial city of London.
Yeah, the whole drug industry is being backed by the city of London. They really push that. They want that because it makes them very wealthy. Because that money that they're making has got to be put into some bank someplace. And they want it in their banks. But that's only one thing. The green movement. What's the origin of the green movement? Again, it's the city of London. There's one other thing I'm going to tell you about, and you're going to think I'm crazy. But what's the origin of communism? It's the city of London. This is things I have learned now over almost the last, 9, 10 months, something like that, in listening to these people, and they explain in detail, and you can understand where I'm coming from if you listen to enough of their stuff. And I think they are dead on target because it finally explains what's going on. What about the Council on Foreign Relations? Do you know where its origination is? Anybody know where it came from? Was this just a group of people in America that got together and decided they were going to form the CFR? No. It came from Chatham House. Do you know what Chatham House is? Chatham House is the English version of our Council on Foreign Relations. The Square Mile decided they need someone over here to direct our foreign policy that would benefit them. That's what the Council on Foreign Relations does. That's why they push wars. Wars are very beneficial for bankers. They make money on both sides. They'll loan it to this side, they'll loan it to this side. They don't care which side wins. They make money on both sides. All this stuff, these people are bringing all this together and helping people understand what is going on in the world. Iran. What in the world has Iran got to do with anything? Is it just about the bomb? Is that only reason we went into Iran? No. We went there also because that is part of it. Iran was the puppet of the city of London to keep the Middle East stirred up, to keep the wars going. And all the oil money, all this kind of stuff, they benefit from. So what Trump has done, and a lot of people have missed this, it's one of the most brilliant things I have seen. By cutting off the oil from Iran and the oil coming out of Venezuela, not that he's stopped it, but he's controlling where it goes. Guess who doesn't get it now? China. Now, is China going to be invading Taiwan anytime soon when they have not enough oil for their own benefit? No. So Trump, in essence, has pretty much, I think, stopped the invasion of Taiwan by doing what he did in Venezuela and doing what he did up there. And they've talked about some of this stuff too. Yes, sir, Jim.
Going along with that, I heard it on Fox News this morning. All of a sudden, King Charles is going to go meet with Trump here. And hopefully Trump gives him the finger, but
Yeah. Well, what Trump is trying to do right now is he's trying to destroy the city of London's hold on America. One of the things that I have learned in watching these folks is that behind the scenes, they were not up front at all, but behind the scenes, they were the ones that brought us our income tax and our Federal Reserve. Why the Federal Reserve? Again, it's all about control. We whipped them pretty badly in 1776 And they weren't satisfied, so they came back at us again in 1812. We whipped them again, so they decided that they couldn't beat us militarily, but they could control us if they could do it through the money. So this is what's been going on now for all these hundreds of years, and these people are bringing all this to light. So if you're not watching their videos when they come out, shame on you. You need to watch these things. Right now they send out 3 a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. They usually run about 15 minutes. And every one of them is well worth listening to. On Thursdays, they do a live question and answer that you can get on and ask questions if you receive their newsletter and that kind of stuff. I don't usually get on the call itself, but I always listen to what they do on that 2-hour call, because the questions the people are asking and their answers teach me a lot of information. So I can't urge you strong enough to get on this stuff and start listening to it. I think Tom's got another one that he's going to show in a minute, but this will be a good example of what they actually do. If y'all have any questions after this for me or for Tom, we'll be glad to answer them.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr. made one of the most remarkable statements of the past week at the CPAC conference.
I think Donald Trump understands the use of power better than probably any president that we've had, at least since Roosevelt and maybe in American history. I think my father and my uncle would support. I think that if they were around today, they would be making the same kind of choices that President Trump is about Iran, about Ukraine, about trying to raise up the middle class.
He also pointed out that he was raised in a Democratic Party that was very opposed to NAFTA. But the moment Trump came out against it, the Democrats flipped and supported free trade. Those two statements tell you more about what is really going on in the world than endless hours of media coverage or doom scrolling. The media is lost in the fog of war and politics. Take The Economist. They're telling you that Iran has the advantage and a month of bombing has accomplished nothing. Or the mainstream press, which is telling you that the No King's Day rallies featuring adults who dressed up as frogs and featuring drag queens represent the political mood of the nation. RFK's remarks cut through all of that. The binary choices of left versus right, war versus anti-war are being shattered as Donald Trump reasserts real American policies and liberates us from the strategic and economic straitjacket imposed since the end of World War II. These aren't new ideas. They are the oldest American ideas, suppressed and now coming back. I'm Susan Kokinda. I remember Kennedy's uncle and father. I was on the ground in California campaigning for Robert F. Kennedy Sr. when he was shot. And like his son, I've spent more than 5 decades fighting for the opportunity that Donald Trump has given us to bring those principles back to life. So if you have a sense that something very big is happening, that the world is being rearranged in ways the media can't explain, then hit those like, share, and subscribe buttons, stay in touch, and help us expand our reach. Here's what we're covering today. First, the Iran conflict and how it represents a complete break with 6 decades of imperial foreign policy. Second, the significance of J.D. Vance in the negotiations. And third, how Scott Bessent and Peter Navarro are defining the battle by name. That is the American system versus the British system. So let's start with who is no longer in the room and why that changes everything. This week, the Empire's own institutions confirmed it. Chatham House, the British foreign policy flagship think tank, published a piece with a headline that could have come from this channel. Britain's handling of the Iran war shows the limits of UK power. Chatham House also announced that the House of Lords International Relations and Defense Committee will come to Chatham House, where they will discuss the question of what they now call the not-so-special relationship and whether it can survive Trump 2.0. The Empire is writing its own autopsy, and the Conservative Treehouse gave it the headline it deserved. British Defense Minister outlines how the UK Navy will defend the West as soon as they locate their ships. With those tools of the Great Game sidelined, watch what is actually happening.
Right now in Islamabad, the foreign ministers of Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Egypt are sitting together for the purpose of opening up a dialogue between the United States and Iran, not managing the conflict, ending it. Britain is not in that room, neither is the EU or NATO. And when Pakistan's foreign minister announced that Iran had agreed to allow 20 more Pakistani flagged ships through the Strait of Hormuz, he addressed his statement on X directly to J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, and Steve Witkoff. Not London, not Brussels, to the Americans. And President Trump himself reposted it within hours. So you have a sovereign Islamic quartet with no colonial history in Iran, no Sykes-Picot baggage, and no 75 years of imperial management to answer for, trying to broker a sovereign resolution. That's a genuinely new thing, and it's happening because the old managers are no longer in the room. And it is important that you see that this is new. The dominant media narratives are written to keep you angry and impotent. Promethean action puts you on this new stage of history and gives you the in-depth analysis you need. So head on over to our website and sign up for our free newsletter. The link is in the description. Now, the empire being out of the room only matters if someone else is in it and acting like an American. And that's where Vice President J.D. Vance comes in. President Trump confirmed that Vice President Vance will be the lead negotiator for the U.S. And the well-sourced Barak Ravid at Axios gave that background. He says, Vance's seniority in the administration and his well-documented opposition to open-ended conflicts overseas, White House officials say, make him a more attractive interlocutor for the Iranians than Witkoff and Kushner. Partly for those reasons, Witkoff recommended Vance as lead negotiator. And Axios quotes another senior administration advisor saying, if the Iranians can't strike a deal with Vance, they won't get a deal. And the article makes clear that Vance has directly challenged Netanyahu on Israel's overly optimistic assessment on regime change and on its endgame goals, both of which diverge from the administration's. The neoconservative model that ran American Middle East policy for 30 years never did that. American foreign policy was just a tool in the British toolkit alongside Israeli foreign policy and Muslim Brotherhood fostered extremism. The result? 30 years of managed conflict and no resolution. Vance is doing something different, acting as an American official representing American interests, including our interests in not fighting a forever war. Now, Vance's role is public, but it does echo something older. It echoes the role that Robert F. Kennedy Sr. played in the Cuban Missile Crisis. JFK sent his brother, the Attorney General, to conduct secret back-channel discussions with the Soviets because he knew that RFK shared his agenda, the American agenda, and that the Soviets would understand that. This is what RFK Jr. is pointing at, not a specific tactic, but a disposition. And that disposition has largely been absent since FDR last exercised American power during World War II. The endgame of that war was to defeat fascism. But Roosevelt's stated intention, unfulfilled because he died before the war ended, was to free the world from British 18th century methods. Unfortunately, those methods remained intact until now, as managed conflicts kept especially the Mideast from economic development and peace. Now, the same break you're watching in Islamabad is happening simultaneously in trade and monetary policy. And this week, both Peter Navarro and Scott Bessent put a name to it. In a Politico interview, presidential trade advisor Navarro made clear that this administration is carrying out a revolution.
Our trade policy is fundamentally revamping the entire world order in the language of the other side. Donald Trump, going back in history, channeling Alexander Hamilton, channeling McKinley, channeling Henry Clay, is basically adopting an America First policy where the protection against unfair trade makes us stronger.
So Navarro joins Trade Ambassador Jamieson Greer, Treasury Secretary Bessent, and Vice President Vance in affirming that this administration's policy is that of the champions of the American system. And Navarro then made clear who represents the old order. He was asked about Mark Carney, former governor of the Bank of England and now Canadian Prime Minister, who is currently organizing a WTO coalition to try and check Americans' trade policy. Navarro was direct. He said, "It's typical Carney behavior. We've got a problem in Great Britain and Canada with liberal Trump haters." Now, let's look at Carney's former employer, the Bank of England, which was suddenly in the news this week in a story that was overshadowed by Iran coverage and the government shutdown. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent went to war with the Financial Times, the mouthpiece of the City of London, on the issue of the Bank of England. The FT published a story claiming Bessent had praised the Bank of England as a model for restructuring the Federal Reserve. And before they published it, Bessent had given them an on-the-record denial, and they ran it anyway on anonymous sources. So Bessent shot back with vehemence. By publishing this explicitly false story, the FT has officially become tabloid trash for market participants. In short, FT has literally manufactured an entirely fake policy position for me and the administration. And here's the punchline. He went on to say, "There is much to be said about the storied Bank of England, but any recreation of its operating framework on this side of the Atlantic has never been contemplated. The shameful journalists and editors at the FT are shocking in their meretriciousness, lack of standards, and general intellectual libertinism. It is the worst tradition of Fleet Street to manufacture news rather than report it." So what's really going on here? The Bank of England model is the City of London's preferred architecture for central banking. Bessent is rejecting that. He wants to narrow the Fed's mandate and return to financial instruments and credit instruments that will serve productive economic activity. When the FT tried to claim his reform agenda for their framework, he smacked it down with force. The American system revival that Navarro is pursuing in trade, that Bessent is pursuing in monetary policy, that Vance is expressing in foreign policy, it's all one thing. So whether it's the FT or Carney's rules-based order or the Chatham House autopsy, it's the same old imperial order responding to Trump's new American agenda. Which takes us back to where we started. RFK Jr. at CPAC saying his father and uncle would support what Trump is doing in Iran and in the economy. What Kennedy is saying is that there is an older tradition that defines what American power is actually for. Not managing conflict for imperial financial interests, not free trade frameworks that drain American manufacturing, not central banking architectures designed in the City of London, but policies that support sovereign national development, productive economy, and policies that are actually for peace built through construction. Hamilton named it, FDR reasserted it, JFK tried to revive it, and Trump is the first president since then to bring it back to life. That is what is invisible inside the binary choices that the old order provides you. Pro-war or anti-war, free trade or socialism, Fed tightening or loosening. Every one of those binaries is a cage, designed to make the American system unspeakable. Well, Promethean action speaks the American system loud and clear. And once you see the tradition, the shape of what is happening becomes obvious. And that clarity is exactly what this channel exists to provide. So help us speak it louder, and support us by going over to the Promethean Action website and becoming a paying member or contributor. This has been your Monday Brief. Thanks for watching.
Please take a moment and subscribe to our free newsletter at PrometheanAction.com.
Questions? Anyone? Comments?
I just think that it's eye-opening because there's so much going on within relative to the globalism and everything, George Soros works off of the same model essentially, making money on both sides. He gets most of he's not spending his own money, he's spending our tax dollars.
Yes.
That he's been getting.
NGOs.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
The latest release this week, $200 million that went to Ukraine found its way back to the DNC for the 2024 Biden presidential run.
Well, Planned Parenthood, NPR both gave 10% back to the DNC.
Yeah.
So that part is not new, but it's truly amazing how far back this goes.
Well, yeah, it goes back to 1776, and even further. They have been involved since day one. They being the city of London. It just, when I found my first video and I got a hold of Evelyn, my first thing I asked her was, did Barbara or Susan work for the military intelligence? And she said, no. I didn't realize that Barbara was the paralegal going back to the 70s for all the lawsuits. The other thing about lawsuits is George Bush, when he was the CIA, had a lot to do with putting LaRouche in the jail for 5 years. So, yes, but I'm saying, so this whole thing gets to, as I said earlier, this is not about R versus D, because Democrats should feel the same way as Republicans about our country. And so, Mike, your comments.
Yeah, that's one thing that we really have to get away from is Democrat versus Republican. That's a part of the plan of the City of London. They want to keep us divided. As long as they can keep us divided and we don't come together, it makes it much easier for them to control us. And I want to point out something else that Trump has been attempting to do, and the courts are trying their best to stop it, deals with tariffs. How many of you are in favor of tariffs? Oh, that's good. That's good. Do you know why? Do you know what the benefit of tariffs?
Well, our first law enforcement officers were customs agents. But we did not have an income tax until 1913 when the 16th and 17th Amendments came around. But it funded everything, but the biggest part of it, just from my small-minded perspective, is it kept government small.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you. Thank you so much for that, because that's exactly what Trump is trying to get us back to. Most of you don't know this, but my undergraduate degree is in economics. I went through the economics school at North Georgia College back in the 70s. That's when I took virtually all of my economics courses, was in that time period. The one thing I have never heard of until these people was the American economic system. I didn't know it existed. All they taught us was all these British economists and what they were saying. That was the basis of my understanding of economics. And it's all wrong for America. It's not what we're supposed to be for. When the Tea Party first got started here back around 2010, most of you know that I was the one that got the one going here in Gainesville. And one of the things that we pushed in the Tea Party was free trade. That sounded good. Free trade ought to be free. There shouldn't be any interference. Well, where would that concept come from if you understand the American economic system? It's going to come out of the City of London. They don't want tariffs. What happened beginning in the 1970s in America? All of our manufacturing began to leave and go to other countries. What was the purpose of that? Why would that happen? Because the City of London knew and understood if they could take away our manufacturing, we become a weaker country and a country that's easier to defeat. Because if a major war broke out like World War II, up until Trump got some steel being made here in America, they could have cut off all of our steel supplies. We could not have built the ships, the jeeps, the tanks, and all those things we did in World War II under that condition when everything is made someplace else and we have to get our steel from other countries. That could bury this country. Trump is trying to reverse that. That's why he's trying to put in these tariffs, and we need to help our friends and neighbors understand this concept and to understand what the American economic system values very highly. This is one of the primary things of the American economic system is ingenuity. That becomes one of the major wealths of a nation. That is what made America go from when it was first began to be founded in the 1600s up until the late 1800s. We became a literal powerhouse. Why? It was because of that American economic system where we had tariffs that kept out cheap goods and allowed our industries to flourish. And it didn't hurt us. It made us very wealthy as a people. That will happen again if we can get these tariffs in place and keep them in place. We won't need the income tax. We can finally break free of the income tax and the Federal Reserve that the British foisted on us. So your friends and neighbors need to know this, and they don't. Believe me, they don't know about the American economic system. If I went through economic school and I didn't know about it, I guarantee you most people in this country have never heard of it, do not even know it exists. You had a question?
England as a whole, I was just wondering, is that area of London, are they getting any pushback from the rest of the country, or are they just oblivious and they're so used to their socialized medicine, et cetera?
I think most of the working people in England, about like the working people over here, they don't even know it's existing. They do not know that the city of London, that economic area in the London, England, is doing these things. They don't know it. We didn't know it. You know, I've learned this in the last 9 months, but it just brings everything together, and I understand where all these different things are coming from. They're all coming out of the city of London because they have no laws. There's nothing to stop them. They can do anything they want to financially if you have your offices within that square mile that they refer to as the city of London. And when I learned that, I mean, think about that. It's almost like our Wall Street. They're almost the same way. They pretty well control our Congress, and the city of London controls Wall Street.
What it did is it kept the government, our federal government, limited in its abilities because it only had so much money, and it had to come to you and I, war bonds, if it needed anything else. So it naturally kept government small. But as you know, in economics, government spending creates what? Inflation, which is a tax on the poor that hits all of us. Whereas if you're not being taxed as an individual, that money's in your pocket, that creates market demand, which creates an explosion in industry.
Yeah.
When the green movement was mentioned, the first thing that came in my mind was King Charles. He's real big into that green stuff, isn't he? And I just wondered, the royal family, do they have any connection, or they're so autonomous that they're oblivious to all this stuff going on, or are they a part of it? I don't know. Just curious.
I haven't heard Promethean, and maybe Tom has, but I haven't heard Promethean talk about any connection between the square mile and the king and that part. But I have heard other people talking about it. So I think it's probably there. I think they know what's going on, and I think they agree with it. I don't know whether this is true. I have heard that the King and Queen of England, whichever happens to be the one in charge at the time, that they are supposed to go to the square mile, the city of London, and pay homage to the mayor of the square mile. I don't know whether that's true. I've tried to find that out. I do not know whether that's a true story or whether that's just something that has been made up, but it makes me wonder about that. I don't know.
Why is the United Kingdom in general, why aren't they doing anything about this? Because they're laundering money, let's face it.
Yeah, well, they're just like us. They're pretty much under the thumb. You know, it's not easy to put a stop to this stuff, and especially if you don't know what's going on. You know, that's one of the reasons nothing is done about it. And most people don't know what's going on. They really don't. You know, ignorance is killing us.
Just about kind of unrelated to what we're talking about, I just got a text message that in the chapel at the Washington, D.C. airport, there's a chapel there. There's no crosses there, but there is a copy of the Quran. So you go to the chapel at the Washington, D.C. airport, and the Quran is open for you to do whatever.
Wow. That's not good. Tom, you got anything else?
We've got a Barbara video if you want to show.
A what?
A Barbara video.
Okay. One thing I can say is, since finding these people and getting Mike and George and Andy's input, and I talk to Evelyn almost weekly, and I plan to go to Washington, D.C. with the Promethean group in late April to lobby on behalf of the American economic model and getting Republicans to campaign. And when I handed this out, this is their latest piece, and it's talking about the American model is back. And so all the people that, you know, the hate Trumpers or Trump haters are going to be there no matter when. And so when you talk about $14 trillion coming into this economy, bringing jobs, industry, manufacturing, I could care what they make, but these are American-created jobs in America that will give good. I mean, one of the things I first liked about the Promethean people was, remember when you had a family that had one paycheck, the mothers took care of the children, and they lived the American dream? Where's that today? And it's just disappeared. And the big killer, as Jim talked about earlier, is inflation. And what does it cost now to run a family? And some of that's self-inflicted, but I'm saying the day of having one family, one check, you know, is almost a dream in today's world. And I credit a lot of that's all been happening because all those good paying jobs are gone. You want to go ahead, Richard.
Born in the 40s. In the 50s, my mom was a stay-at-home mom. My dad worked at Chrysler Corporation in Detroit. He died in 62, and Chrysler Corporation gave my mom a job. And she raised us kids. In the 50s, there was all American cars and some Volkswagens, which didn't even count. They were so different. Now, you got Kias, Hondas, Toyotas. You got just about everything except American cars. And you mentioned tariffs. Well, we had a foreign student that was in the family in the 80s. And we were in Helen, and they had old cars, and the beautiful Thunderbird went by. I says, you got any Thunderbirds in your country? Denmark. Got any Thunderbirds? Thunderbird? Never heard of it. Well, what do you do? They got Toyotas, Hondas, and all these foreign cars. Because the tariffs, we paid, but we didn't get any tariffs for the return trade. It was stupid. And now Trump's changing all that. And we got all these stupid people that don't realize it's good for us. The war with Islam, right now, is almost exactly as it was in 1800. That's when we made the Navy and the Marines, because we didn't have a fleet, and the pirates were strong. They were taking everything we had when we were shipping things. And they enslaved the American sailors, made them slaves. This war with Iran is a continuation of putting Islam down. because through Obama from 2008 to 2016, he promoted the nuclear Islam. He paid them, supported them, and made the nuclear treaties. Trump won in 16, but Obama went right down the street and kept his Organized for Action supporting Islam for 4 more years while they were out. Then they took this 2020 election, and Biden and Obama still promoting Islam. That's 16 years of supporting this. If you read the Tripoli Pirates, it's amazing how similar it is to right now. They were crooked then, they were terrible, you couldn't trust them, and that's the same way they are now. And Trump, here he is taking this war to Islam, which most people don't understand. But Islam doesn't belong over here. And then he's in Venezuela. Well, Venezuela produced our Dominion voting machines. They used them there first and tore up their country. They brought them here, and they're tearing up our country. And if we don't get rid of Dominion and take our Dominion back, God-given Dominion, our country's done. But Trump is doing so much, and we really have to pray for his safety. I appreciate it.
You want to play what you're going to play, then we'll wrap it up.
Sure. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you for being here today. Bring some friends next week, and let's fill up the room. Thank you.
Can I add one more thing?
Sure.
He brought up Islam, and at some point, this country has got to come to the understanding, and you do it simply by looking and seeing what the Quran teaches. It actually comes in sections, and as you start reading the Quran, you'll find as you get toward the end, it becomes much more warlike. And there's something, I believe it's called abrogation in Islam, which teaches that what comes last takes precedent over what comes first when there's any discrepancy in the Quran. So that means that all these war things, killing the infidel, all this kind of stuff takes precedent over the good stuff that is actually in the Quran in the early part. That's one thing that we've got to understand. The second thing that the people of America have got to understand, and especially our politicians in courts, if you begin to look at this, you begin to understand that Islam is not a religion. It's a political system that masquerades as a religion. And as a political system, it has no protection under our Constitution. And until our courts and our legislators understand this, we're going to keep getting further and further down this road and deeper in trouble. You know, look at what's going on in Texas, up in Dearborn. This is not good. And we're seeing very little done about it. So that's something else you can share with your friends and neighbors, that it's not really a religion, it's a political system.
Very good. Be sure and leave a tip today. John, okay? And for Dave.
We're already recognizing this issue that you're talking about. And Tommy Tuberville, and Connie's from Alabama. He was a football coach. I'd met him years ago. And he says, we got to get these folks out. And so he's put that to bed. So we need to help him get this crowd out. Yeah, that's right. Also, but he's a nice guy, real nice guy, good football coach. So, but you're right on top of it for sure. I tell you, and you know this. Who's that guy West that comes often here? You know what I'm talking about? Jim West. He is really on top of it, and so it's an issue that it could kill us if we don't step in and do some pretty pretty quick. So we're looking at Texas, Michigan, Minnesota, those areas. They've really been doing a lot of work, and we got to step in and yank them out.
Thanks, sir. All righty. Last call. Thanks for being here. See you next week.